SnapTech IT is the expert go-to resource for all things CMMC, education, certification, preparation, and ongoing managed IT. Manage, secure, grow. Check it out at snaptechit.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 123 CMMC. My name is Dana Mantilia. I will be your host today, and we have a very special guest. We have Karl Bickmore, and he is with SnapTech IT. So welcome, Karl. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about your company?
Thanks, Dana. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. SnapTech IT is a managed IT provider with offices in Phoenix, San Francisco, and also the Atlanta area. I happen to hail from Arizona myself. A little bit extra rainy with monsoons as of recent, but nonetheless, we're busy and providing access to IT services for companies all over the United States. We happen to focus in the defense industrial base and for clients that are looking to become CMMC certified.
Okay, perfect. Well, then that ties right into what we're going to talk about today, getting ready for CMMC. So starting at a very high level, give us your 2 cents on what you think about the overall process for CMMC.
Well, I think the biggest thing that, a lot of folks know that it's coming. They know that there's, regulations that they're going to have to pay attention to. A lot of folks know that they have a big gap or things that they need to work on. But in the beginning process, they're not really sure who's the right person to ask or how to go about it. My first advice is that, the CMMC accreditation body, or CMMC-AB, has folks that are registered providers and also registered provider organizations. And so the first is to find an RPO, or a registered provider organization, to engage with, to begin the conversation so they can begin kind of looking at what you've got and taking you through that process. And after you've begun to speak with an RPO, the next step you really need to take is to figure out what implementation level you're going to be looking for. There's 5 implementation levels. And so far, it looks like a lot of the prime subcontractors are going to be requiring everybody shoot at the level 3 from the local perspective, and some are okay with level 1, depending. And so, if you're not sure what level you should go at, your prime subcontractors, the Raytheons, the Orbitals, the Northrop Grummans of the world, the various ones that hold the master contract, they're the ones that are probably going to give you what level you need to operate at for the products that you work with. But nonetheless, you'll need to determine that. Then you begin the process of meeting the interim ruling from last year, where you do an assessment of the NIST 800-171 using the Department of Defense scoring methodology, and you create your first strategic systems plan, or SSP. There's all sorts of acronyms in this. If you haven't seen that, but anyway, you create your first SSP and you create your plan of action and milestones, or POAM as they're called. And then with a gap analysis, you kind of begin to map out what you're going to be doing next, and in what order and over what period of time. Most folks are able to lay out a multi-year plan, and that's what is typically what makes sane sense. But that's the general thing: is engage an RPO, figure out what level you're going to implement, get your initial assessment, 800-171 assessment done, begin building your system security plan or plan of action milestones if you haven't got one started already, or update and modify according to your findings. And then, create that gap analysis and begin determining what time frame you're going to do that remediation. And then, hopefully that will line up directly with the time that you actually have a CMMC audit come to you, and you'll be ready for it. And so that's the overall engagement process. It first starts with an RPO, and then through the cycle of planning and remediating over time.
And just real quick to rewind, because I ask everybody about this, is do these, especially the subs, do they really see this train coming down the tracks as of right now? There's probably some chatter out there, but do they really think it's going to be affecting them, and when they should start working on this whole thing?
I think that I see both responses. I see those that are like, oh, it'll never happen. That's the government. And then I see those that are very much like, oh, no, we're already behind and we need to start now. And I don't know I don't have a crystal ball like anybody else. There's lots of swirling rumors and things, but I will tell you, for me, the guideline is your prime subcontractors, essentially your customers. If they're going to require it of you, then, hence it being required of them, or due to it being required of them, then you're probably in for it. And so ask them. And the questions that are being the way those questions are being answered, in my experience with the customer we've been talking to, is they all think it's happening, and they're already looking forward to asking you what your current score is, and when you think you're going to be getting to what level. And I've seen many of them begin to put pretty good requirements of timeframes and say, hey, look, if you want to keep on this contract or manufacturing this part or these sets of parts for us, you need to be at level 3 by the end of 2023. That's one that I'm hearing a fair amount. But it's gonna be driven more by your customers and how much you want to sell to them, is my comment. So ask them.
That's a very good point. So now here's one that they're probably all wondering, especially depending upon how big they are. How do they even go about figuring out a budget for this?
Well, every organization is a little bit different. And I think it really comes down to first, setting aside some money for the assessment. And, it depends on the size of your organization. That could be anywhere from, $8,000 to $50,000, depending on how much time is necessary, how complex you are. So it's really hard to say. You start with the conversation with the RPO. They're going to give you what an assessment will cost. And then out of that, you should be able to get a really good picture of a multi-year budget on how this is going to go. But I will say this, if you're not currently doing any of this stuff, you can count on your IT spend. When you add in the cybersecurity spend on top, it's probably going to be about double of what you currently pay today. That seems to be a good rule of thumb. And there will be assessments to pay for in the future as well when you, for instance, actually become audited. But there's a lot of different conversations going around about how many people were required and what type of qualifications. And so the price of that's really unpredictable right now. And that's probably a couple of years off for some people. Some may have it come sooner. But how do you go about the budget? You first have to get a good assessment that comprehensively looks and then gives you an annual planned roadmap and what the high level budgets are.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get so nervous though, thinking about some of these small businesses. I mean, if you're a 10 to 20 employee business and somebody comes in and says, okay, just the assessment could be up to $50,000, and that's just the assessment, then you got to get ready. So now you're looking to spend $100,000,
Well, I could tell you, Dana, from our perspective, a machine shop with around 50 computer users and about 100 or so maybe shift employees working equipment and machinery and whatnot. We're typically completing initial assessments in the range of $8,000 to $12,000 for that organization. So it's not as bad. But every organization is different size, and it's really about the amount of time and effort that has to be put into and how much investigation needs to be done. The larger, the more locations, the more users, the more equipment, the more complex it is, the more time it will take to complete the assessment in a thorough manner.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially if they have different locations too, because now you're talking about traveling and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
All right, so here, I love the story time. So do you have any good stories for us about how you either helped avoid or when you had to clean up a cyber attack?
Well, I hate to say it, but I think that as I'm talking to a lot of our clients or just others that are in the defense industrial base and they're manufacturing subcontractors out there, I hate to say it, but I feel like there's a lot of folks that are pretty far behind. And so the cleanup process is what we see a lot of. But I can tell you, we've had some pretty interesting and fun wins. I mean, a lot of folks in their IT have some protection things. They've got some backup, some endpoint protection. They're doing some things from a security perspective, but many of them don't have good detection tools in place, things that do like threat detection or threat analysis or look for anomalies. And, I could tell you, just last week we had a customer that our threat detection software noted that there was an improbable login that showed that they had logged in the New York State and also Tennessee within about 5 minutes of each other. And so we were able to very quickly recognize it, have it floated up. We began the incident response process. We looked at it. We were able to quickly get the end user, change credentials, move things away, make sure that we could see where traffic was and wasn't coming from, and really avoid what could have been who knows, because somebody had successfully logged in and it clearly wasn't them. And, that's really what this is all about, is how do we protect this data and how do we know that the bad guys have gotten in, or, what are the detection tools? And if you can begin to grab those things before they get into the system and live there and cause all sorts of havoc over time, it's a real big win. And so, we have situations where we've caught email compromises before they've really gone far. But I could tell you, we've also been called in for incident response for organizations that have been totally owned, ransomware infections, and their data's gone, their backup's been deleted. I feel like a lot of us have heard about this by now. And I say we've seen some doozies. Some of the worst ones we've seen have actually where we've been called in to actually clean up other IT providers whose tools got compromised and all of their customers compromised at the same time. And boy, those can be really, really high stress days for quite a while. And, you have to talk to legal professionals. You have to get the insurance involved. It's a complicated, I'd say it's worth the bang the buck typically to do the things to prevent it.
Yeah, and I think that's the stage that we haven't quite gotten to as far as everybody being proactive instead of reactive. And I think as more and more time goes by, and unfortunately there's going to be more hacks, more ransomware, more this, more that people will finally realize they need to be proactive as opposed to just reactive. But I think that's we're still a little ways out there for everybody to be thinking on a proactive way, like fire insurance. We're not quite there. Yeah,
that's right. At some point in time, you have to recognize that the likelihood that you're going to have a security event, the percentage is getting very high now. And so now it's better to prevent it than it is to pay for it when it happens or act like it's never going to happen. The term that's being used a lot lately, it's not a new term, it's actually easily 10 years old, is how cyber resilient are you? How quickly and capable are you to be able to orchestrate business continuity, incident response, disaster preparedness with your cybersecurity defense? If you can build good cyber resilience in, it's typically going to be financially better. But in the case of CMMC, it also puts you into a position where you can win contracts that others can't, or you can keep contracts that you would very much like to.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. And a lot of the times when these business owners are sitting down with their insurance brokers, they're saying they talk about business continuity insurance, and usually it's typically in the event of either a fire or an earthquake or something, a flood, something catastrophic like that. And they, like you just said, we need to be talking about it in the situation of a cyber attack. How quickly can you get back up and running and have all your pieces and parts in place? So
well, and if they've done their renewal this year, they're already being asked to do some of the very same things that the CMMC compliance wants you to do. And so, we're seeing this across the board, that as our clients are renewing their E&O or their business continuity or their cybersecurity assurance, they're now getting questionnaires that are asking them to do some of these proactive things, or else their renewal is not going to be available. Mm-hmm. And so it is coming to a head in some ways very quickly here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I say, over the next year and a half, I think we're going to see a huge change in everybody's natural outlook on things. Okay, so go ahead. You want to say?
Well, I was just going to say, as a business owner myself, if I'm looking at this from my customer's point of view, I would say, do I want to be first, second, or third, or last to the crowd of becoming available for contracts? I would like the idea of being first. That's where my head is. That way, I might get more contracts out of it, and I also am seen in a better light by my customers. So for me, I like to approach my customers with a strong cybersecurity point of view, and I feel like it not only is it better business practice, in case something, but it's also better sales practice. It's a better customer acquisition practice, in my opinion.
No, that's a very good point. And as far as being first, there's other advantage with that, is that as this starts getting rolled out and more and more and more companies are going to be, government contractors are going to be required to do this, the assessments take people. There's a big need for assessors right now. So, that then you don't want to be waiting until the end, and then now you're all set, but now you're waiting to get an assessment. That's that you don't want to do either.
Well, that's another benefit of working with a company that has some experience. The registered provider organizations, many of them will know assessors that they can refer, that they can help you get access to, because I see it feels like you're hinting a little bit at this, but I think it's entirely possible that they will all be busy, and you're looking to get your assessment, and you may have to wait far longer than you're hoping for. Now, the reality of it is this is all just barely coming online now. So the shortage isn't there now. But like you said, in the year and a half time frame, this will be in full swing. So, it's about hitting the market, what makes sense for your organization. But there will be some issues, I think, in getting assessor availability to be able to become certified.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, moving right along here. So as a DoD subcontractor begins their journey, CMMC, what cybersecurity basics you recommend them addressing right out of the gate?
Well, there's levels of implementation, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the level 1 only has 17 controls, and it doesn't involve a need for a lot of documentations from policies. That really starts at the level 2. But it really covers some of the real big fundamentals. And if you don't have these in place, highly recommend it. I mean, the two major cybersecurity events that happen are business email compromise and ransomware. And business email compromise has number one protection, which is multi-factor authentication. It's not improbable. It's not impossible that it can be beaten, but it makes it way less likely. And it is also really not difficult to implement. It's simply a matter of having a minor amount of expertise and getting it done. And so implementing multi-factor authentication for email is, well, look, 92% of successful cyber attacks are business email compromises. That's a really big number. So why not do the simple, easy, one major thing you can do for that? Mm-hmm. The other point of that is that after you've got the MFA, you could really do a lot by beginning internal security training. There are great and easy to access programs that can take you through it. A good IT provider can advise you on how to set these things up. They are not crazy expensive or complicated, but really raising the knowledge and awareness of your staff is very important. It's practically helpful, and it's a big checkbox on things that you have to do at a bare minimum. Mm-hmm. The other thing is just general password security. Implementing longer passwords and making sure that you're not doing shared accounts and shared passwords. Within manufacturing, this is like a really common no-no that's done all the time. And it does involve thinking about your equipment differently and your access differently, but it is one of the things that really is probably low-hanging fruit and should be done quickly. One other quick thing to note, too, is if you do have remote access into your facilities or into your networks or systems, that also should be controlled with multi-factor authentication, not just both email and remote access should be required to use multi-factor authentication for all users.
Mm-hmm. And, the remote access, a lot of companies back in the day when we all had to go home with COVID, they just set it up. So maybe everybody should revisit it just to make sure that the way that it was initially set up, which probably was not the most secure way, is set up now in a more secure way.
Done under duress and quickly in responding to incidents, perhaps mistakes were made, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you this, the thing that we see all the time is that it's implemented sometimes and not for others. And it really only gives you the level of risk avoidance that it should if every user is using the multi-factor authentication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. All right, here we go. So why is it important to work with a CMMC-AB RPO?
Well, the accrediting organization, the accreditation body, CMMC-AB, is going to be dictating how you are going to be assessed. And so having an organization that understands that only seems to make sense. Mm-hmm. To be perfectly frank, we have seen a lot of folks out there in the industry begin to offer consulting or training and classes on CMMC, but they are not RPOs. And therefore, they're basically offering their own opinion without verified training from the accreditation body. The other piece is that RPOs have some background checks that have been completed against them. They have there's a level of assurance with that as well. And so just consider, would you like to work with the folks that have been trained specifically with the actual accreditation body and ones that have had background checks by the accreditation body, or folks that just claim they know what they're doing, And so you get it's in my opinion, a no-brainer to make sure that you're working with an organization that's part of the process.
Yeah, that's a very good point about the background checks. Very good point. Know who you're working with. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very, very much. Do you have anything else, Karl, that you'd like to offer to our audience before we go?
Well, I guess the last thing I'd say is, hey, look, this isn't something you have to slam and get done in 30 days, and you don't have to lay out all your cash up front. And if you have an organization that's done this a little bit, they can help you spread it out in the smartest way. And so this isn't something that you're going to have to do urgently yet. And if you pace it out and you plan it over a couple of years, it's much more approachable. And you want to do it strategically in an order that makes sense, so that you're going to be meeting your business needs, not doing more than you can do, but also at the end getting your goal of what the accreditation is and maintaining the customer relationships that really are going to be requiring this to be coming. So that's my advice, is think about how it can be spread over time and how you can really smartly apply it over time. So
yes, and that's a very good point, because that will help the budget, right?
Right.
Same thing. All right. Well, thank you very, very much for your time and all your awesome input. That was very, very great. I think there was a lot of good stuff that came out of there. And thank you, everybody, for watching. We hope to see you on the next episode. And take care till then. Bye.
Thanks, Anna.
SnapTech IT is the expert go-to resource for all things CMMC, education, certification, preparation, and ongoing managed IT. Manage, secure, grow. Check it out at snaptechit.com.